Okay. Welcome, welcome.
Nataraj. You often say that there's nothing to promote and there's nothing to defend. And I have found myself in a situation where it's very, very clearly that a very specific conversation can only be had if I promote myself or defend myself. So the best course of action is to remain silent. And then what arises is how then to process what must fall away after that. And what comes next, I guess, from all of when you stop defending and promoting all of the things that will fall away from that, I guess. That's my question.
Yes. It's very good. So courageous. It's a fairly advanced teaching, this. Certainly an advanced practice. There are obviously circumstances where this does not apply. We're not meant to be martyrs, you know. And we're not meant to be doormats. And of course, we're not meant to use people in those ways either. But there comes a time when we're ready. And instilling the tongue, we become very aware of the thoughts and the thought patterns. And so even the contemplation of no defense, you feel it in your heart and your gut. And you've tapped into the well of the subconscious in this way. And now you're in awareness of your own self. By stilling the tongue, you become aware of what really, with great urgency, wants to be said, isn't it? My guess is over the past few days, you've been looping in a dialogue of the things that want to be said. Yes? And practicing, if they say this, I'll say this. Have you noticed how many times you've had the same conversation over and over in your own mind, said the same thing to the imaginary one in your mind? So stilling the tongue in the world, to the world, offering no defense and promoting no version of yourself. It'll take you right to the quick. Right to the marrow of your emotional being. And in here, you'll come to find the wound. All of the strategies of personality are to cover the wound. Not to heal it, but to cover it. Our strategies of coming and going, of liking and not liking, of promoting and defending our opinions and our beliefs, and our very understanding of who we are, our identity. Swami Shivananda asserts, bare insult, bare injury, highest sadhana, highest yoga, he says. Jesus says, turn the other cheek. This is very advanced practice. One more time I'll say it. This does not mean being a martyr or a doormat. In this resolve to not negotiate for your surrender, you will come to know yourself. That was hiding. It's already, you're feeling it now, yes? Just even in the question and the contemplation of offering no defense. You come into contact with that one. This one must be seen, accepted, and loved. You could call it your inner child, perhaps. You could call it your karma or your conditioning, your subconscious. This one from the wound, without judgment, I will say, has been ruling you like a petty tyrant. I don't think I can turn up my volume on this end. Can I? Let me see. 1 second, please. Is anybody having trouble hearing me? All good. Okay. So whoever's having difficulty, you can try and turn up your volume a little bit. My input is maxed out. So I apologize for any trouble you're having. I don't think there's anything I can do on this end. No, it's quite all right. So this one, that must be seen and held, loved, fully accepted, unconditionally. This is the only way through. It cannot be rejected or neglected. It cannot be abused. It won't work. But this one has been ruling you. Is the wound, the fear, and the anger that propels the ego through the world with all of its strategies. This takes tremendous courage. This work will bring you to your knees. This one belongs to the past. Karma is past. Wound is past. You see? You have never been past. There's not one moment ever where you have not been now. It hasn't happened. And it's only some trick of the mind, play of the heart, that we abide somehow in our perception in past. So many wounds. And the lattice, the structure of ego is a collection of memories, resentments and nostalgias. We'll just keep it very, very simple. And this is a mind reflected on past called ego. Ego has one movement. You will know it because it is always saying, I'm right. And then everything we call personality are learned strategies for survival, for giving and receiving love. When past is healed, when wound is healed, when strategies are abandoned, strategies of the past abandoned, one comes to a raw experience of now, in touch with wound. But the courageous one will turn and face the Goliath, and be healed. This is epic. This is the hero story. And you're that character. And you're looking at your Goliath. Trembling. But are you finished running? Scheming and plotting, negotiating, mortgaging your very own sense of self in order to fit into, to be loved in the love that is transactional. This isn't wrong. It's never been wrong for you. It's not wrong for anybody else. There's no need to condemn it. But maybe it's time to reclaim Your sense of self independent from past. To be now. To be now in your very direct experience. And this is not a one and done. This is a practice that will bear such beautiful fruit for you. Also in this, even contemplation of relinquishing the game of self-promotion and self-defense, otherwise known as surrender, you'll come to see face to face how much you care what other people think of you. How much of behavior, of identity, is reactive to this. I think I know what you think of me, and I adapt in order that you like me. I may not even like you. Isn't it this way? You don't like somebody, but still you want them to like you. It's true across the board, this is true. But it's a bit silly, isn't it? So this practice of stillness, reclaiming the tongue from the strategy of self-promotion and self-defense, you'll come to see all of it. It won't be pleasant, but it's worth it. And what's more, that these strategies adapted, these strategies are the identity. The sense of I is lost in the strategies. Can you see it? I is a verb. You see? It is movement. And when you see it from a relative place of stillness, you see its inherent non-existence. It's not entirely right, but hopefully the pointing is at least. So what you're promoting and defending is a sense that really has no anchor in anything real. When we suffer honestly the slings and arrows. Surrendering even the strategies and the sense of I-ness itself, the misunderstanding of I-ness. Having ventured inward in this way and suffering honestly, without retaliating to the world. The fruit of this, the victory of this battle is peace, love, quiet confidence. A confidence that is itself humility, and humility itself that is confidence. They're the same. And it's through our sense of constantly strategizing, scheming, of how to be accepted, how not to be rejected. We betray what is honest in ourselves. And this is suffering. In a conversation about something very similar, I was talking to my daughter, and she said, "Dad, kill your reputation and be free." Some years before, I came home from work. She must have been 7. And some mean girl called her a bitch in the girls' bathroom. And she was so upset, and clearly she had spent an hour or more with her mother after school crying and complaining. And then when I got home, she launched in for another round. And I just set her on my lap and loved her. And we talked about how much it hurts, you know. And we just sort of spent that time together. And then I asked her, "Sweetie, are you a bitch?" She got mad and punched me in the chest, you know. "No." "So why does it matter so much that somebody calls you that?" I said, "What if she called you purple?" You would think that there's something wrong with her eyes, or the light is funny in the room. People say so many things about us, don't they? We all know this. Even the ones we call each other friends, they too can be offended. And then what was once wonderful is now, you know, what was once friend is now, there's some animosity. Or vice versa, where there was animosity, there can be some affinity. So it's always changing. Now, I'm not saying that we're innocent, you know? This isn't the point. It doesn't give us free rein to just be whatever we are. We'll bring our own suffering and share it so well with others. But you see, if I'm dependent on my sense of happiness and confidence on what you say about me, this puts me in a very difficult predicament, because what the world says about me is constantly changing. Isn't it true? One day, somebody praises you. You call them friend. One day they criticize you. Most likely behind your back. Right? And now they're enemy. So, where can you invest your sense of I? Now watch very closely in your own self. The one contemplating this, withdrawing the identity from the shifting sands of outer landscape, outer world, people, others, you will think, I must become callous, inured, protected, walled off. No, not true. The opposite. The strategies are walls. So one might think to withdraw one's sense of self from the world, we would become callous or antisocial. It may feel like this. It may actually feel like this for some time, but it's not true. And it blossoms into an intimacy and enthusiasm with life and the world that is previously unimaginable by the one before they endeavor in this way to be free of, to be emotionally free of what the world says about it. Also to be free of what the mind, rooted in past, continues to say about this, about us. Not everybody is ready for this practice. There's no urgency in it. But when one comes to see, then this is one legitimate practice to gently withdraw from self-promotion and self-defense. Even just the practice of silence, mauna, stilling the tongue, especially in conflict, you'll come to see yourself very quickly. it's always such a balancing act, isn't it? To love yourself as you withdraw with the tendencies of self. It can be very confusing. And so you hold yourself and soothe yourself and be with yourself while it hurts. But always remember, you're not purple. You see? It's both. The mind is always wanting to be this or that. And always bouncing from this and that. And when the mind is in this, that is wrong. And when the mind is in that, this is wrong. So painful. You are this and also that. That and also this. It's a false choice. The paradox, when each one comes into the sense of standing in paradox, this is the ground of spiritual progress. And the mind is always trying to figure it out, this or that. But there's no problem. The mind cannot resolve or integrate what seems paradoxical to the mind. And the not mind, or the I that precedes mind, is untroubled. Nothing is excluded. Nothing need be rejected. Part of the strategy of ego that says, I'm right, is opposed without knowing it to its own self. Do you see it? That the movement, the strategies are in opposition to your own self. Specifically, in this case, talking about how we move in accordance with how we think we know what other people think about us. This is self-oppositional. Now, the mind will say, well, then you'll just be a rogue. But you see, the mind itself will not lead you out of mind. The only way is to simply sit in it and allow for what seems to be oppositional, paradoxical. Simply allow it to be, and you sit still, unmoving. No riddle to solve. No challenge to overcome, other than the temptation to move and engage in it. You see, the mind is labyrinth. And you have a sense of navigating labyrinth, but truly it's just your own mind. Perceptions, let's say, just to keep it simple. In mind, navigating mind, you will try to seek the strategy to find the center of the labyrinth. And with increasing discernment, see the patterns of your own labyrinth, your own mind. But you see, seeking the center of the labyrinth keeps mind busy navigating mind. Wherever in the labyrinth one is, sitting and not moving, this is the center. The center is where you stop. There's no exit. Mind navigating mind, there is no exit. Only where you stop. From here, this is very difficult. It sounds so simple. This is very difficult. It's also very simple. But where you stop, all of the labyrinth will come for you. A storm comes, and you sit. All of your everything comes up and out. Center of labyrinth is where you stop seeking. Sitting, stilling, labyrinth itself will fall away. Labyrinth has no exit. Sitting, labyrinth itself has no existence. There's no bind, there's no trap. The moving itself, the navigating itself, self-propagates the sense of bound. So, let me ask you this now. If you can feel into this, if you can see it, can you also be totally okay that you will tomorrow navigate the labyrinth out of habit? Will it matter? No. Can you give yourself the freedom to be as you are without constantly evaluating? Without a constant refining of strategy? You come away from a conversation, you have it 20 more times in your head, thinking of the things you could have, should have said, or things that you should not have said. Can you just be okay with what was? To not be opposed to your own self, as flawed as it may be. Because I promise you, this self-judgment is the bind. Pretending to be the thing that will free you, it is itself the bind. It can take many years, even many lifetimes, to come to the spiritual, emotional, psychological, and mental maturity to simply sit still. There's no rush. There's no urgency. Urgency itself is the bind. Quicksand. So whatever it is that people say about you, that you would offer some defense, or try to re-educate them by some personal public relations campaign. You've got your whole internal marketing and PR team. Your tongue is the salesman. Yes? They just have a big retirement party. So, to the world, retire the tongue. At least the salesperson. Then you'll see the marketing strategy. You'll see all the previous press releases. Now, watch the patterns of mind, of self-evaluation. Because you see, what you think that you know, what other people think about you, where does it come from? How did we miss it? It seems to come from them, doesn't it? Maybe in a way, yes. But in a very important way, not even a little. In Reflections in a Mirror, Newtonian, the angle of reflection equals the angle of reflection. Inflection, reflection. Mind, reflective mind, angles. I see a reflection and I take it to be original, real. Seems so real. You see, because this mirror of world is animated. As an intelligence, keeps a record of all reflections. A hall of mirrors, so many reflections stored up, memory. Labyrinth, reflections, mind. This is very good news. Do you see the good news? Do you know how exhausting it is to continue to employ a strategy that doesn't work? Can you feel how tired we are in that? And you're not alone. In two important ways, you're not alone. You're not alone in the misunderstanding, and you're not alone in the clarity that will come. You're not alone. And it's true, so much energy. You will be amazed. Even just a 10%, 10% of your strategies dissipate. You'll have 20% more energy. I don't know. We don't even realize how exhausted we are because we've never experienced the kind of clarity and focus and energy that even a proportional sense of freedom from mind produces. There's this hymn I remember as a child, and let's see if I can remember it. It's a song from church, and it's Jesus with the words, "I go before you always. Come follow me. I will give you rest." This is the I that resides in the cave of your own heart. The same Christ that moved through the prophet Jesus. I go before you always. I goes before you always. I gives you rest from the exhaustion. Are you ready? It's so hard because it all seems so real. Remember that last night when you dreamt, everything seems so real to the dream character. The dream character itself seems so real. The world it navigated seems so real. Its strategy seems so important. What if it's also true that what you call waking is like this? But here's a mistake that so many people make. This dream is sacred and meaningful. It is divine. It matters. Literally. And your dream character is the hero. Don't ever forget, you're the hero of your own epic. Who doesn't root for the hero? All the heavens are rooting for the hero. Never alone. Even the ones providing opposition for the hero are rooting for the success. The whole world and all of the heavens are conspiring for your happiness. And when you lock on to what is the source of happiness, and not too much distracted by the reflections of happiness. When you look into the room that you occupy right now, well, it's probably dark for where you are, but you just imagine that all the light you see is the light of the sun. Gives meaning through light and shadow to all of the things that you perceive. Everything is revealed by the original light. And when we're through bumping up against distractions and the false promise of the reflected happiness, we'll find our way to the source. This finally is a good strategy. Not a very common one. Through all of this, love yourself. Grant yourself the latitude to get it wrong. Give yourself permission to continue to misunderstand. This is a very good strategy. If each one who can relinquish the habit of shame, self-criticism, self-judgment will begin to move very quickly. You see, be shameless. Shameful speech and shameful behavior cannot come from someone who is shameless. Do you see it? Because the mind will tell you otherwise, and the minds of others will tell you otherwise. Shameful speech and action cannot come from one who is shameless. There's nothing to draw from. Who has something?
Oh, I have something. Happy birthday, first off.
Thank you.
Glad to be back. Just adjusting to being in Brazil. But I just wanted to talk about and ask about like pain. So not only my own pain, I feel like we talked about this earlier, but feeling like somewhat attached to other people's pain, especially like family's pain, and maybe like feeling responsible for that. Just kind of just wondering how to like navigate that as well, because when I see like doubt and shame in others as well, I feel like that's hard to fit within me too.
Yeah. It's very tricky. Have you seen how one derives sense of value from attachment, entanglement in emotion? Part of the framework of love, worldly love, is the transaction. That, again, don't allow the mind to make any of this wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it, only to see it, okay? That in order for me to be a healer and fulfill my destiny as healer and to uphold my identity as healer, what do I need?
Somebody to feel bad.
Yes. It's very subtle, and there's no lack of people feeling bad, isn't it? I mean, compassion is a very high conscious vibration. It's also seldom understood. Compassion doesn't mean being stuck in the mud with others. Compassion doesn't mean that I am entangled in the stories of your suffering. Self-compassion means I don't need to be entangled in the stories of my own suffering. But it doesn't reject them either, does it? It allows me to be as I am, as I perceive myself to be, permission and freedom to be honest with my own self. And I grant you that same permission to be as you are, in full acceptance that you are experiencing from your own sense of wound, your own sense of past, the story of me. Compassion is to know I know what it feels like. And I can give you full permission to be as you are, without rejecting you. It doesn't mean jumping in to swim in the same waters. When each one arrives in the vibration, the high vibration and wise understanding of what is compassion, there's a stillness in it. That stillness is the healer. Just like the glass does not quench one's thirst. What calls itself healer is not the healer. The water quenches thirst. The glass is simply a vehicle. And essential. So, for the one who occupies this dimension of compassion, in that, as that, healing happens. Nothing needs to be said. No ritual need be performed. Can be very effective, by the way. The speaking and the ritual can be very effective, so I'm not trying to discredit that at all. It's important. It's just not necessary in the way that we think. So can we say that compassion is knowing suffering of our own selves and coming to recognize that our own suffering has brought us to the place of surrender and freedom, and that it was catalyst to liberation. The mud of the lotus, everybody knows this analogy. The mud that the lotus grows in. So knowing I have suffered, and the suffering that I have experienced has been the very movement toward liberation. I can allow you to suffer as you choose, knowing that it will also bring you liberation. And knowing this, I can stand by you in a total love and acceptance and allow you to find your own way. Recognizing I'm only the body that holds a vibration. Jesus himself says, "Of myself I do nothing." Jesus says this, the miracle worker. "Of myself I do nothing." This isn't some kind of false humility. He says, "Of myself I do nothing. All things are done through me." As an empty cup, a hollow reed. This is very challenging to come to this place of a total acceptance of other and their own sense of their suffering and their own strategies to obtain happiness. Our own sense of our own sense of suffering and our own strategies to obtain happiness. To allow for all of that. Now, it's important to know, to discern that allowing somebody to be as they are doesn't mean approving of the behavior, doesn't mean being best friends with everybody. It doesn't mean being in close proximity even. It just means that the love in your heart is pure. And you yourself can take your distance without judgment. Very tricky. Compassion doesn't mean mucking it up in somebody else's suffering. And we don't invite people to muck it up in ours as a proof of their sincere love for us. Compassion can be understood at so many levels, and I'm quite sure there are levels of understanding of compassion that I have not risen to. But this much I know. You are the holder of that which is compassion. And can be the expression called compassionate. But it requires nothing of you other than empty, non-judgmental. Very difficult, especially when it comes to your family, because these things through karma are so tightly bound. It can take so much effort. We're triggered and drawn into the stories that are so well articulated in us. The ruts very deep. Can we bring compassion as the wrapper of experience to put all of experience in the container of compassion. We're so used to having experience that we call unpleasant or suffering and wrapping it in judgment. Self-judgment and judgment of others. Just as an experiment, not even as something spiritual, not even something moral or being good or doing good. Try it. Try wrapping every internal experience in compassion. See what happens. Try wrapping another who's suffering and sharing their suffering with you that you also find unpleasant. Try wrapping them in compassion. See what happens. Try it. Try it tomorrow just to see what happens. You'll find resistance in yourself. Wrap also that in compassion. Compassion is a difficult practice and a very high attainment of consciousness. And it is not what most people call it, and not how most people experience it. What if the whole thing can be expressed very simply as non-judgment? Compassion, equanimous love, liberation, bliss, knowingness, I itself. What if we simply know it as non-judgment? Not even total acceptance, just non-judgment. I don't mind. Mind being a verb. Mind being a verb that is the expression of mind. Subject. I don't mind. So, let's sit for a bit together in quiet. Just be empty. this emptiness is as vast as the ocean, is full. How is it possible that a drop I call me obscures what is ocean? A drop in ocean, not knowing ocean. How is this possible? This emptiness, we come to know the fullness. It makes no sense. Not to the mind. A drop of water already in the ocean, never once apart from it, knows itself only as drop. How is it possible? I don't know. I am so overjoyed to see you. I feel so blessed by your presence. Not saying that as something to say that sounds spiritual or some teaching on humility. This is my honest to God truth. I feel so blessed by your presence.